Hi, my name is 𝗵𝐸, and I'm from Salt Spring Island, British Columbia, Canada. I was a gay kid who struggled an awful lot with it. My parents weren't particularly religious, but I just knew I didn't want to be gay. And I spent pretty much the first year or so of college involved with a fundamentalist Christian group trying to pray the gay away. I signed up with my parents' home address because I had just moved to college. And so I figured, well, I don't really have a real address because I'm living in the dorms, so I'll just give them my old address. And lo and behold, all this literature showed up at my parents' doorstep about, curing homosexuality and the church and Satan and all the rest of it. And my parents were not particularly religious. So I remember coming back that first Christmas and my mother saying, just sort of gently, she's sort of like, the Bible is really a metaphor and it's not really literally true. So be careful, how you interpret this. So I think for them, it must have been some really interesting conversations they had about whether they'd rather have a gay kid or whether they'd have a fundamentalist Christian kid. Needless to say, the idea that you could pray the gay away or that you could change didn't really stick. I was, of course, a virgin. I had never really kissed anybody, let alone had sex with anybody. I didn't really have any intimate relationships until about the second or third year in college in 1985. By that time, I had already heard about AIDS. People talked about AIDS as going to be the new Black Plague that would kill 2/3 of the people on the planet. And so my whole sex life was defined out of fear. They didn't really know the thought that you could get it through sweat, certainly through deep kissing or saliva of any kind. There was also a rumor that ran around one summer that it could be passed through mosquitoes. When I finally did have sex with somebody who was on my dorm floor, we had oral sex. And I remember he looked up afterwards and said, "Oh, by the way, I have AIDS," and laughed, right? And I was just speechless. I didn't know, momentarily. Then he laughed and sort of I laughed too. And I thought, because AIDS doesn't really happen in Montreal. AIDS at that point, we thought, was something that happened to people in New York City or people in San Francisco. It was really localized. We just assumed AIDS was an older person disease, somebody who was really promiscuous, who'd been around a long time. Several years later, I finally did come out and got involved with my husband in 1989. I went home once to visit my parents. They had another family that we're really, really close with. He had gone to some of the same clubs and had some of the same professors and things like that. And then lo and behold, like a month later, he died. And I remember my mother kind of saying quickly, "I think Richard had AIDS." And that was all she ever said. It really hit home for me because this was somebody I actually knew well. Really well, had grown up with, somebody who, as I said, was the same age as my brother and same age as my current boyfriend, and had gone to the same school, had gone to the same bars and discos I had, but was there 4 years earlier. And I just realized, wow, did I dodge a bullet? That could have been me. That can be me. And all that time being a good little Christian virgin may very well have saved my skin. I kind of think if I had been just a little bit smarter and a little bit braver, I very well could have been in his shoes. I say to somebody, it was a lot like arriving at a disco just after the music ends, and the bar lights come on. Because there was always this notion that, gay life was a big, huge party and there was tons of promiscuity and wild, crazy times. But, when we arrived on the scene in 1980, there were no bathhouses anymore. Those had been closed. Bars didn't have cruisy back rooms as much. The party had definitely ended. And the focus for us and for many other people my age was to find a partner And instead of promiscuity, it was more like monogamy was really the in thing. People didn't talk so much about how many partners they had. They talked more about how many years they had been together. And at that time, there were new magazines that arrived that were gay, but were based on a lifestyle. Working out became a big thing. Health food came out as well to protect your immune system. All of those issues, housing, healthcare, and all that stuff, hospital rights, ended up being the causes that we fought for in the 90s, which ultimately culminated in same-sex marriage. There were ancillary effects of the fight against AIDS, and one of those was that it became important to have the right to get married because marriage included the ability to have your name still on the lease if your partner died, or to make decisions for your partner in the hospital, and all of those things. I met my partner in 1989. We've been together almost 30 years for the same people. AIDS really made you take stock of what you had. It was too dangerous out there to try to find somebody else. It was easier to work through the issues we had together and to stay together than to think, well, there's got to be somebody else out there who is, going to be more perfect, more suitable for me. We found that love played a huge piece in being gay. Really, being gay was really about loving each other. And the sex was, another part of that. But I think in the 70s, the sex was more primary. It's not to say that there weren't lots of people out there having, promiscuous sex. That's a time-honored tradition. Gay, straight, any age, that's going to happen. But if I were to generalize, I would say one of the benefits of that time period of AIDS and the danger and the vulnerability that it highlighted was that it put a lot of focus on keeping relationships intact or appreciating the relationships that you had, not just loving relationships, but also friendships, people that you could rely on if you did get sick. And what it really meant to be gay was really about companionship, love, understanding, not just with your partner, but with each other, because we really were in this all together.